Michael Oren worked closely with President Obama and Biden during his time as Israel's ambassador to the U.S. He also later served as a member of the Knesset, Israel's parliament. I spoke to him earlier this morning about the hostages and Israel's response in Gaza. Ambassador Michael Oren, thank you for being here this morning.
Good to be with you.
I want to start with a little bit of good news, and that was the release of those 2 U.S. hostages. I wonder how surprised you were to see that 2 weeks later, and what you might read into that.
Well, first of all, we were glad that they were released, healthy, and we pray and expect the release of the rest of the hostages. The number keeps going up, by the way. We're at about 2,212 as of today. That we know about, 212 hostages. I had a personal experience with it. I was interviewing on MSNBC, United States, with Martin Fletcher, a very esteemed journalist, and he all of a sudden broke out crying because these 2 women were his relatives, his wife's relatives. And it was, to me, could not be a coincidence that only a few hours later Hamas released these 2 women, and it was very public event. Hamas is astute. They're smart, and they're playing a clever game, which is to release hostages, one after another, in such a way as to divide Israel from our allies, from, say, the United States, from Canada, from France, and to create a situation where there'll be growing pressure on Israel to accept a ceasefire. A ceasefire, from Israel's perspective, and I cannot emphasize this enough, means Hamas wins. It means Israel has no deterrence power. I actually don't even know who would live here anymore after that. And it means Hamas gets away, literally with murder, with massacring 1,500 people and taking hostages. So our position has to be no ceasefire, unconditional release of all the hostages immediately.
President Biden obviously made that wartime visit to Israel and then made an address to the Oval Office this week around aid for that region and Ukraine. How important was it for him to make that visit and send that message about U.S. support?
Paramount importance. I can't really tell you how deeply moved I was, and I think I speak for all Israelis, by his speech last week, by his visit, by Secretary of State Blinken's visit, and the message. It wasn't just a visit. I mean, coming for a president coming to a country, any country in wartime, is exceptional. But what he also said when he got here, and what he said was, as a person who has experienced loss in my life, he's a widower who lost 2 children. I know what it is. I know what it is to feel loss, and I feel your loss. I categorically condemn terror, unequivocally support Israel's right to defend itself. And moreover, he actually backed up these words with I thought, very surprising moves, advancing 2 large naval battle groups into our area. Other battleships, the destroyer Carney took down 3 missiles from Houthi rebels in Yemen. The Houthis are backed by Iran. So America's already engaged militarily in this conflict. It's extraordinary. This is a time when, I don't have to tell you, in Canada, Congress is probably rather dysfunctional, and there's no issue that Republicans and Democrats agree more on than isolationism. It's not getting involved in foreign conflict. So this is quite an extraordinary move by the president. It has global ramifications as well, a message, I think, to Russia and China. But there are strings. I think it's rational and reasonable to expect there would be strings. So one of the strings was opening up a humanitarian aid corridor to the Palestinians in South Gaza, those who have been moved out of the battle areas in northern Gaza. Israeli public opinion was very much against this, I think for emotional reasons, but not only. The feeling was that not providing that aid provided a certain amount of leverage to Israel in securing the release of our hostages. Israeli reports are coming out now that the Biden administration also pressured Israel not to open up a second front in the north against Hezbollah, or conversely, to open up a first front against Hezbollah and leave Hamas for last. I was personally very supportive of that notion. I published an article in the Israeli press well over a week ago saying just that. We should leave Hamas for last and focus on Hezbollah, which is a much, much greater threat than Hamas is. And Hamas is, in any case, trapped. It's not going anywhere. And apparently this notion was seriously debated by the Israeli government, but nixed by the Americans.
Well, let me ask you about that. How much do you think the Americans, given your knowledge of American politics and all the time you've lived there, how much do you think they are working right now to stabilize the region, to contain this to just the fight between Hamas and Israel?
Yes, and it's going to require, I think, the highest level of diplomacy. And I'd say, as an observer and a practitioner of U.S.'s relations and diplomacy for many decades, I'm very impressed with the way the Americans have been navigating this so far. It's this. On one hand, the administration is going on a limb by moving these naval assets into the region, putting them in harm's way, at a time when many Israeli analysts are saying that the chances of Hezbollah intervening in this fight, particularly at a stage when Israel is bogged down and in Gaza, already our soldiers will be tired from having fought for so long in such difficult circumstances. If that happens, Hamas has 150,000 rockets. Many of them much bigger than what Hamas has been throwing at us. Many of them are very accurate. They're guided missiles. So the chances are that those two aircraft carriers and their flotillas will actually engage Hezbollah, certainly try to take down missiles. They have very advanced anti-missile technologies on board. But the United States would like to avoid that. So the United States is saying to us, well, deal with Hamas. We're giving you a green light to go into Gaza. Do your utmost to keep civilian casualties to a minimum, provide the humanitarian aid, and we will not get dragged, hopefully, into a war with Hezbollah and its patron, Iran. That's American fear, legitimate fear, I think. Mm-hmm. But they also want America to have another sort of caveat, and that is they want to know about our plans for the morning after. And here, too, I think that's a legitimate demand. And what's the morning after? Israel doesn't want to reoccupy Gaza and be left, say, holding the keys to Gaza. Who are we going to give the keys to? And whether it's an Arab force, an international force, to what degree would the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah be involved with this? And I hope that the Israeli government has thought very long and hard about this and is sharing those ideas with the United States.
Okay. Ambassador Michael Oren, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you much. Have a good day.